Alrighty, Harry, as always, great to have you back on this show. So, let me just jump right into it because there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. For example, Biden, Trump, rematch. Biden comes out of the gate swinging at Trump. And Trump, of course, is just Trump. How do you see the upcoming election cycle playing out?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's just as you say, Trump is being Trump. And if you take, just the greatest hits of any given week, the doggerel, the mental gaps, the, absolute kind of nonsense are spectacular. And in the same period of time, Biden will have a couple verbal hiccups. And somehow that's national news, and Trump, it's just Trump. In fact, I wonder from your expert vantage point if you see, I know people who don't know him personally, but who've said, looking at him, a sort of droopy right eye, it seems as if maybe he is declining. But how do I see it playing out? People I respect who know more about politics than I do are genuinely alarmed. I've managed to persuade myself, with the help of some people who are really pretty good about what matters and what doesn't in the polls and things like that, that at the end of the day, though, it will be an anti-MAGA election and he won't be able to prevail. But as we sit here now, it stuns me. I try to think, who is the person who voted for Biden in 2020 who will now vote for Trump? And it turns out, at least on paper, to be 10% of them. And I haven't met any of them, but that is really alarming. I continue to think that Biden will win, but it just might be that I'm kind of optimistic constitutionally.
Yeah. Look, so many conversations that you and I have had, and I can tell you that I have never felt more certain that there are no voters that voted for Biden in 2020 that are not voting. And when I say zero, I'm talking literally zero. Now, I know that people need to air their grievances. Oh, fuck you, Joe Biden.
Right.
I'm from Michigan.
Right?
I'm a Muslim in the polls, right?
Yeah,
I'm from Michigan. Right. I'm a Muslim. I can't stand what's happening in Gaza right now. This is all on you. Shame on you. You should be doing more with Netanyahu, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now the day of reckoning comes. It's November. It's ready for everybody's heading down to the polls, and you get to the polls. And while you're sitting there, you're having the conversation, or maybe you're even listening to Mea Culpa, right? Where you're turning around and you're saying to yourself, wait. Slow the fuck down, cheeky, all right? Because here's the deal. If Donald Trump gets into office, we've already heard from MAGA Mike Johnson, who will possibly be the next attorney general because he is such a sycophant of Donald, that he wants to turn America back into a white Christian nationalist country. Okay, Michigan Muslim, I get it. I get your grievance. I get you need to air it, and I understand it. I really do, and I sympathize with you. But your anger towards Joe Biden is misdirected. Your anger should be at Donald Trump, because the very first thing out of the box, January or February of 2017, remember he passed the Muslim ban, and they tried to couch it as an immigration ban. It was not. It was a Muslim ban. And now you have a guy who could potentially be the attorney general telling you that your religion, you are not welcome in America, even if you're an American. So when it comes time to pull the lever or to fill in the little dot, right, next to who it is that you want, I firmly believe that 99 out of 100 people, there's always a fucking maniac in the group, but 99 out of 100 people will be voting Democrat, will be voting Biden. That's my opinion.
Yeah. And, look, from your lips, but I do think, Michael, there's something about the sour mood of the country overall that translates into the polls. And I think we're going to be learning more from social scientists about the way that polls are flawed. I told you that I've kind of talked myself into it. One thing I've done is talk to certain polling experts, like this guy Podhorzer used to be the AFL-CIO, and he really makes a compelling case that, look, all of this is background noise. It will come down to these 6 states, enclaves within them. The polls are just not sophisticated enough to reach them. Moreover, those key voters may or may not even be talking to people. So when you have these alarming polls that, as you say, may just reflect a kind of certain discontent when the pollster calls you and they don't get cell phones and all that stuff, it really doesn't tell you much. Obviously, it doesn't tell you the opposite, but I've talked myself into not worrying about those so much anyway. And also, if you look at the last 2 elections, the focus really has been on him and on MAGA. I think it's going to be a MAGA, anti-MAGA election. And if that's right, he loses. There's always been a majority, I would say, not even a poor of people who there's the Democrats and then the nominal or the Republicans, but who say, man, January 6th, et cetera. So, I think that creates a majority. Now, of course, the bigger question for a podcast like yours is, why is that even so narrow? If that's the focus, who are all these people who are like, January 6th, I don't know. I think the economy was better under Trump, which of course it wasn't. But the people who are so indifferent about this, assault on our democracy, we live in strange times.
Oh yeah, very, very strange times. So let me then ask you, because I know, Harry, that you're closely following the Florida documents case, and today Judge Cannon is hearing Trump's motion seeking to dismiss his case. Trump claims he was entitled to take them. I mean, I listened to this fucking buffoon the other day talking about the documents and how they're personal to him, and he believes that he can actually declassify them. He believes that he can keep them under the Presidential Records Act even after he is no longer the president, that simply by him taking it means that he's entitled to it. Now, again, he keeps saying that he has presidential immunity, and that his case is no different than Biden's document case. Perfect Trump deflection. I mean, that's all that it is, right? What? Don't look at me. He's like a magician, right? See over here? Don't look here. We're looking at Biden over here, off screen. So what's going on in the courtroom today? And how do you think that the judge will ultimately rule on this?
Yeah. So let me say, these are 2 really garbage, meritless motions that would not take maybe any hearing time in the hands of most judges. He's filed 7. These 2, they're as you say, but they're not. It's not just that the theories are crap. Even if the theories were accurate, it wouldn't be a motion to dismiss. So he's saying Presidential Records Act. Now, remember what that's about, by the way. It's to clarify that presidential records belong to the people, with the narrow exception of personal diaries and stuff like that. So he wants to say he magically, hocus pocus all of them into personal records, these records of, these classified documents about nuclear secrets and how we would deal with Iran, etc. That's absurd on its face, but it doesn't matter. Let's say you called these somehow magically personal. There's the criminal law that says you can't take national defense information, which this would remain classified information, and keep it from others, give it to others, unlawfully maintain it. So it's not just wrong in the theory, it's wrong in the facts. And what he's really trying to do is launch what would be a crazy ass argument to bring to the jury and somehow get Judge Cannon to use it as a motion to dismiss, which as a lawyer, when it comes to motion to dismiss, you assume the best case for the government. So it's wrong 6 ways from Sunday. But now we are Donald Trump in Judge Eileen Cannon's courtroom where kind of anything can happen. She's the one who said, let's take a day to just talk about these two motions. Trump decided although he complains about having to be diverted to show up in trials, he doesn't have to be there. He's being there the whole day, just a couple feet from the woman he appointed. Maybe can remind, what things could happen to her.
Are you trying to say that her ass is sitting in that seat because of him? Yeah. Yep, exactly.
There's an Alice in Wonderland quality to this whole thing because it just wouldn't deter any other judge for any time at all. He is the Humpty Dumpty figure here, saying words mean whatever I think they mean. But it's totally the facts that he's asserting don't hold up at all. But anyway, he could make him to a jury. Even if the facts were right, they wouldn't be a basis for motion to dismiss. So what's going on in our courtroom now? A whole day. They're on lunch break as we speak of argument over these two things, including one that says, because of my special powers, the whole thing is void for vagueness. I can't possibly figure out what they're charging me with. Again, nonsense. But she indulges him. I think she sees the difference between rulings that could get her quickly reversed and recused and others. But even on those others, she's so receptive to the argument. She's so willing to kind of slap the government around a little and handicap them. I can't see, just because it would be so stupid of her, to that she grants either of these motions, but I can see her taking a lot of time to deny them, and I can see her denying them in a way that still hamstrings and kind of disparages the government. And this is just two motions, you add them up, and I think this most solid cut and dried case is going to over the November line, boom, without passing go. And that's the real problem here is, I think this one should be heard, and it's solid and it's important and it's just so straightforward. But I think it's not going to happen before November in our courtroom. Then we have all kinds of different things to think about, depending on, if he wins, as you know, he just instructs the Department of Justice to drop that suit. So a delay does him quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, there's a second part. Remember, to the question. Again, what Donald is very good at. Actually, he's not good. He's not just good at it. He's legitimately fantastic at it. And that's deflection. Yeah. No. Stop looking at me for this illegality. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden had documents in his garage right next to his Corvette, yada, 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 right? And then he goes on to say that his case is no different than Biden's document case, meaning that Joe Biden should be indicted as well or drop the case against me. In fact, he did the same thing or tried to do the same thing to me only a couple of days ago when Alan Weisselberg...
Michael Cohen.
Right. To me, Michael Cohen. He tried to do the same thing when Alan Weisselberg was charged and found guilt and pled guilty to perjury. The first thing that his lawyers came out with is, Michael Cohen perjured himself, and they actually filed papers,
how do you feel about that? Law enforcement's gone easy on you, Michael. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Real easy on me with an unconstitutional remand, 13 months in Otisville for another guy getting his mushroom dick pulled by a porn star. My life has been fucking fantastic. But describe, if you would, to my listeners, like the key differences between the Biden document issue and the Trump document issue.
Jeez. Okay. If some of your listeners are older, they may remember the Goofus and Gallant feature in Highlights magazine in your dentist's office, which are night and day in terms of virtue and vice. Look, we have no idea that for all we know, Biden and it's likely had no idea that these had been spirited away. They mainly do consist of diaries and stuff that are personal records. So it's quite innocent and small at the beginning, but that's the least of it. Thereafter, we have this spectacular, first 18 months by Trump, bobbing and weaving and holding the archives at bay, and then just flat out, mafiosi obstruction when the subpoena gets served, making his lawyer lie. We just found out 2 days ago, spiriting away some of the documents in white bankers' boxes. I mean, first of all, way, way more worrisome national defense information, but knowledge that he has it. But the biggest thing is knowledge that he is defying the United States, saying we need this back and doing everything he can to obstruct. He's like, just in these documents, he's a mini crime ring, whereas Biden is at most a negligent having taken stuff home. There's no prosecutor on any side of the aisle who would have said you would indict Biden. And I think there's no prosecutor on any side of the aisle, given DOJ practice, who would have said you don't indict Trump. So it's as you say, is it a diversion or just the most simplistic and deceptive high level? Well, they were documents. But, in sound bites, especially as presented on Fox with supportive commentators, do a certain cadre of the people say, oh, it seems the same to me. And the difference is just the deep state and, Robert Hur, conservative U.S. attorney who's a Biden lover. It's so easy to break down and demolish. But it also can be easy for certain people, at least, to ignore. I wanted to double back, if I could, Michael, to the question I asked, because as it came to me, it struck me as interesting. You know him so well. You've seen him. You're aware now, as we all are, of his gaffes and very, noteworthy kinds of stepping on his own tongue, Pelosi, et cetera. Do you think, as you look at him, and I've also had people, neurologists say that we got a droopy right eye. Do you think things have gone downhill for him cognitively from the man you knew very well in the last couple years? I know you're not a physician. I'm not asking you to say stuff you're not sure, but I just wonder if that has struck you one way or another.
Whether it's on my Twitter, my X account, or Threads, or TikTok, or wherever I post it, I've actually been very clear on this. He does not look well to me. He doesn't look healthy to me. I don't know whether maybe he's on Ozempic or some sort of a semaglutide, to help him with his weight, but he's dragging his back foot. His face looks, as you said, droopy, like in the eye. And he's making a lot of mistakes, cognitive mistakes, that I don't recall him ever making those kind of mistakes at all. In fact, one thing that I would say about Donald when I was in his orbit, and again, we're talking 6+ years ago, lots of shit happens in 6 years, from the age of, 72 to 78, right? Right? I mean, especially a guy who is not a healthy 72-year-old, right?
Doesn't have a healthy diet. I know that.
He never made mistakes with names and dates. He was like an elephant. We used to say that. He had a memory like an elephant. This guy can't even fucking remember that E. Jean Carroll is not his wife, Marla. And he's also, with this sort of sloppiness and laziness and lethargy that he seems to be portraying right now comes very blatant, stupid mistakes. Mistakes that he never would have made certainly when I was there. For maybe two reasons. One, because he wouldn't make the mistake. And two, I would have been there to make sure that I caught it before it happened, right?
Yeah.
Let's just go through some of the distinctions or some of the things that Donald did
back to the
that certainly
now?
Joe Biden did not do in terms of the documents, right? And these are where I say he's getting lazy and sloppy. And a lot of it has to do with the pressure. He's under massive pressure. The financial pressure, the Manhattan DA case now, all of these three other indictments. He could be looking at 700 years in jail. He's already looking at financial ruination. So let's just start with some of the mistakes that Trump has made with this, document case. One, Walt Nada telling the IT guy to flood the room, right? And they're doing it, as you said, in this mafiosa type of way where the guy's got to be in your camp 100% before you actually tell him to flood a fucking room containing IT. Or the same guy telling him...
do it on his own, and this is a guy who also lied to a grand jury, so...
Right. This is also Donald had a lawyer, and I forget what her name was. Carolyn Bob, maybe?
We made sign
who had signed the affidavit. Yeah. Meanwhile, now it looks like she's what? General counsel to the RNC? You know what that is? That's called the quid pro quo. He's afraid that she's going to leave the camp, especially in light of this case possibly coming back to fruition before, the election. He has her sign a fake affidavit. I think it was Boris Epstein that had her do it. Then on top of that, they have this guy, Brian Butler, moving documents. Somebody, and I still believe it's Jared and Ivanka, more Jared than Ivanka, that turned Donald in regarding the top secret documents that were hidden in a safe and in his office and so on.
Wow,
there's only somebody.
That's an incendiary headline.
I've been saying this now for over 2 years. Since the raid, I said, the only person who would know about the documents, where they're located, what they were, as far as let me be very clear. Brian Butler didn't know about the documents. Yeah. Walt Nada didn't know about it. Melania didn't even know about it because he would never tell her. Jared, on the other hand, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the maybe 2 or 3 people. And I believe Jared is in a lot more serious trouble, or should be, based upon all of the things that he did while he was a senior advisor. And I believe that Jared is the inside mole for the government, for the FBI. I believe it.
Wait, but so those are just... You think they have charges over him and leverage, and he's cooperating and giving up his father-in-law?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow,
he doesn't want to go to prison like his father Charlie did. No chance. But these are just a few of the many things. Showing the document to the guy from Australia, the member, waving it in front of different people, saying, don't talk about this. This is top secret, and so on. But I guess I can. Maybe I can't. You know what? I'm not the president now, I can't declassify him now. I mean, all of these things, and that shit's on tape, trying to get rid of the video. Joe Biden didn't do this. The documents sat in his garage.
It's almost insulting to even have to say it. It's littering versus bank robbery. It's just so night and day. And Trump, of course, he's leapfrogged over other people who were prosecuted, but did 1 or 2 little things, like the guy who, stuffed the classified docs in his jacket. Biden. Biden had not an instant of sort of guilty conduct, or Trump says, he did this so he could sell books. None of the information is in the books. It's so I agree with you, but we could spend the next 3 hours detailing the play. They're just not remotely comparable.
And then the worst part is that you get morons like Jim Bag Jordan parroting the same thing at a congressional hearing. I mean, it's really sad because, look, whether you like Jim Jordan or you don't, and I'm no fan, the guy is still a member of Congress. Do your fucking job, man. Do your job. This is now nothing shy of political theater, with everybody trying to kiss Trump's ass.
That's his job. That's the deal. That's how he sees his job. And certainly not passing legislation or trying to help with immigration or anything like that. That's his job. Talking points for Donald Trump.
Exactly.
What do you? Yeah.
So Harry, let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
What recourse does Jack Smith have in the Florida case? Because we know the 11th Circuit is not a big fan of Eileen Cannon. But what can actually Jack Smith do to have her do her job or be removed? One or the other. You don't get it both ways.
Yeah, it's not about doing her job. It's about removing her. He's not going to change her, but he's looking for her to make a mistake, but she knows he's looking for her to make a mistake. So she's been, if you indulge the cynical view of Judge Cannon, you see a whole pattern of behavior where she gums things over and doesn't do things and waits a long time but doesn't really pull the trigger on a patently mistaken ruling because, as you say, the 11th Circuit, she's got 2 strikes on her, and recusal is hard in the 11th Circuit, and DOJ institutionally doesn't want to do it casually. They want to really have all their ducks in a row if they do it. But I think one really clearly wrong ruling, and they will move to bouncer, and I think the odds would be pretty good. The chief judge, a really conservative guy, Pryor, seems to be very poorly disposed to her. So what could that be? Either of these motions, Michael, they are just completely off the path of any kind of legally sound approach. So either of those, were she to grant the motion to dismiss, that's why I think she knows that, and what she could do instead is just take a long time, keep working the clock, etc. And that's before she even gets to the classified information stuff, which she can, drag out over months. But what could they do? If she granted either that motion to dismiss, that'd be an immediate appeal. They would take the appeal. They would move to recuse. I think they would get it. There's not only that. I mean, as a sort of illustration of her unusual indulgence to Trump on the one hand and very, languorous pace. Remember, she totally screwed up. This is over a month ago now. Trump said, I know the information of the names of these witnesses. They need to be revealed for First Amendment reasons. And he sold her a legal standard. Totally wrong, just completely patently where the 11th Circuit, wouldn't do it. And Jack Smith came in and said, you can't do that. And you've got the totally wrong standard. It's a motion for reconsideration. Straight up, if she somehow tries to stay the course there, they go right up to the 11th Circuit. And even though it's not the biggest, it's such a patent mistake that I think they would move to bouncer and probably would. So I think she won't do it. On the other hand, she holds a hearing on this, and now it's been like over a month. Even on something so cut and dried, she's able to, at least give them another big chunk of time. And we're still waiting. There's nothing to this. If she wants to stay the course, she could do it right away. If she wants to reverse, which she really needs to do, she could do it right away. So there's, dual problems with her. She knows enough. However cynical an approach you take there, she certainly knows the difference between giving him what he wants in terms of delay, which is very hard to bouncer on, and giving him what he wants in terms of the merits, which she's done a few times. But if she goes too far over the line, she can find herself knocked from the case. And by the way, if that happens, everything we've been talking about timing, we're back to like a cut and dried case, a solid felony, another judge on it, and we could move to trial and convict him and Nauta and Oliveira, by the way, who are idiots for not cooperating here. And in relative short order, that'd be the other, important drama of bouncing her, is maybe having it be within a reasonable timeline. Because as long as she's on, I don't know what you think, but I don't see her permitting this to go forward for November.
Neither do I. But you do have to give Donald a lot of credit in the fact that he finds lawyers, right? He finds lawyers.
Big world with a lot of lawyers, though. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Who do his bidding, despite the fact that what they are doing, the papers that they are filing, are actually fucking frivolous. Look, let's not forget Alina Habba got fined $1 million. Let me just go back to the $500 million lawsuit that Donald filed against me in the Southern District of Miami for $500 million with this guy Alejandro Brito. A totally frivolous lawsuit. Then you have, there was even with me again the other day, he filed motion in limine to preclude me from testifying at the upcoming Manhattan DA case. And I said, fine, I'd prefer not to to testify anyway.
Okay. But I'm under day, says Michael Cohen.
I'm under subpoena. He also went ahead and filed a motion in limine to prevent Stormy Daniels from testifying. And then there are certain documents that are very damaging to him that he wants to have precluded at trial. And these lawyers, and you're not talking about, like the Alina Habbas of the world, Todd Bland, Susan Necklace. I mean, talk about people who have, legitimate careers, real reputations, and they're basically taking the reputation, smearing it into a pile of dog shit, and then throwing it, down the sewer. Why in the world would they do that? How many lawsuits, how many motions have people filed on Donald's behalf, including the two that we're talking about right now in the Jack Smith case? Why are they doing it? It makes no sense to me at all. You can't win these. Yeah. And even if you do, by the way, even if you do, it doesn't change the outcome of the case. Maybe it'll delay it for a short time, but it doesn't change the outcome of the case. Let me move on for one quick second and ask you this.
Okay, but I do want to address that because it's super interesting, but go ahead.
Go for it. You go for it.
Okay, so look. First of all, you and I, we try to find disagreement. Unfortunately, it gets harder and harder. But here's one thing. It's not such a miracle. Look what happened January 6th itself. Guys like Ken Chesbrough and John Eastman, they found their way to him. They wanted to be the guys to be sycophantic to the president and do these crazy ass theories, putting their licenses literally at risk. They may lose them. That's the whiff of presidential power and the possible tangible reward. That's for starters. Second, you're right. A couple of these guys are credible. Blaze is credible. Necklace is credible. There is this tradition, after all, Michael, of representing reviled defendants that they can point to, and they move in Republican circles. So, but by far and away, the numbers, there are people who turn them down, in part because they're in big law firms and all their partners say, do not represent him because we won't get other business because people will be so out of joint about it. So it is a temporary quick hit in publicity. Where you're right and where it's a little hard to understand is when a credible lawyer, I can see representing him, but then making these complete, sanctionably bad and often factually inaccurate motions. That's a kind of hit that stays with you. And that to me is a dumb career move. But the overall calculation that would bring a few people to his side to represent him, you can understand. Sorry, go ahead.
So, I wanted to follow it. Jack Smith obviously has a second case, the insurrection case against Trump. And that case has been stalled most recently by the Supreme Court. Yeah. Not a federal or district court, by the Supreme Court. It's almost like they don't want to see justice being done. I mean, all things considered, how do you think that Smith is doing?
Look, I think he's doing well, and the obstacles he's encountering are not of his own making. And the court's a good example. We don't know what happened there. Remember when it was taking a long time, we were speculating somebody was dissenting, but they weren't. 13 days. there was some kind of machinations, probably on, by the Alito Thomas crowd to get them to take it. Everybody understanding the stakes and the delays. But you're Jack Smith and his Supreme Court counsel, Michael Dreeben, who's top of the charts and hugely respected. You're going to encounter things in the political sphere where people will misunderstand, and from certain judges, including Supreme Court justices, that, that's the hand you're dealt. So you can't fault him for that. By and large, you gotta tip your hat to him. I'm in a real minority here, I think, including you, in the trash Merrick Garland crowd for how long it took, etc. That's a different discussion. I continue to have enormous respect for him. The thing you got to say about Smith is, man, he hit the ground running and has continued to apply the pressure, put together solid cases, and by all indications, if and when he gets to trial, they'll be solid also. So the fact that he's had certain reversals because Eileen Cannon is a little nutser in the tank, or the Supreme Court has gone that way, that's the hand he's been dealt in the legal system. So I think he still continues to get strong marks.
So let's just stick with the Supreme Court for a second here.
Yeah.
Because look, as a former lawyer, somebody, who will get his license back down the road, and speaking to you, Harry Litman, another lawyer, I really have a lot of respect for the Supreme Court. I had, I should say, a lot of respect for the Supreme Court. And I had a lot of respect for judges. Now, that's not to say that I have disrespect or I have, ill feelings towards all judges. Clearly not true. I think, for example, Alvin K. Hellerstein is one of, at least here in the Southern District of New York, I think he's one of the most upfront and, legitimate guys that are on the bench. You have a really good
bench in Manhattan federal bench.
Well, I don't know. We have a lot of shit too, to be honest with you. We'll agree.
Anyway, let's put it on the side. Stick with the court.
Yeah. So my question really to you is, how do you think that the Supreme Court, who right now I see them as insanely divisive and partisan, will rule in Trump's immunity case? And why do you think that they took the case after it had already been decided by both Judge Chutkan and the D.C. Circuit Court? Lastly, why are they waiting until April to hear it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is clearly an important...
I thought quite a lot about all these questions. I clerked there for a couple years, and I revere the institution as well and have a sense of it. Let me try to dispatch all three of those questions in relative short order. One of two things, and maybe both, I think, happened. Either they decided, look, this is a big honking question, and that's our job description as the Supreme Court. We have to take it. That's one possibility. The other possibility, when you look at their carefully crafted question presented, is, and this would have been conservative folks on the right saying, it's not enough. We don't agree completely with what the D.C. Circuit did. That is, we think there may be instances in which a president should be immune from criminal prosecution. Let me make very clear what should have been the headline. They are not going to rule for Trump is not going to win his immunity motion. That's just not going to happen. But they could take a while and articulate a principle that is, okay, you can't be immune unless it's a super core function, say. Then they would remand to the district court. Is it a core function? She would with no trouble say, no, it's not. But he would still then get another quick trip up and down, so get another month or two out of it. And on the delaying function, that would matter. And so, we're going to find out what happened in those 13 days. But I think their ruling, the worry is they'll say something that will then require a remand. But Trump will not win on that remand, but he's playing for delay there. And what was your third question? on what would they do? What were they doing those 13 days?
Why are they waiting until April to hear it?
Oh, yeah. And yeah, you're totally right there. It's fairly quick, but nothing like they've done in other cases where they can really go warp speed. And you're right. It's only medium quick, and they've got other things on their plate, and maybe they're thinking it's not our responsibility to try to have this done by October. Excuse my dogs who've just come back from a walk and are rambunctious. But I agree with you. That's a little bit blatant or notorious that, like, come on, you could do it more quickly. Ditto after they get it. When, maybe there'll be two opinions. Are they going to go till May? Are they going to go till June? So it's fast, but it could be and should be faster. In that sense, I think it really is irresponsible and maybe even worse, tendentious on the court's part. So and by the way, on a section of the court's part, because that's the other thing about the 13 days, there was some kind of wrestling and tussling going on, maybe even Roberts wanted to summarily affirm it first, but couldn't quite get there. So we're going to find out that story, but it'll be a while, I think. So
that's actually what I wanted to get into, regarding this immunity question.
Right.
Justice Thomas, despite a glaring conflict of interest, he might have been the one that cast the deciding vote to stay the appeals court ruling, saying that Trump is not immune from prosecution. So my question...
saying we're going to decide it.
That we're going to decide. Fine. Yeah. Why would Chief Justice Roberts let Thomas ruin, in my opinion, what's left of their reputation?
Right? There are 5 to the right of Roberts, so there's a whole dynamic, and he tries to get like what happened in the Colorado case. He made it seem like it's 9-0 unanimous, but it really was 5-4. He's got a tough group of cats to herd, and they're ascendant on the right. So there's just only so much he can do if that's the story. It's possible also that he took the line, though they didn't seem to take it in Colorado, that we're not going to be rushed because of the election. That's not our lookout. But, they're aware of it, obviously. But the short answer is he's got some tough customers on the right who don't necessarily listen to him. And you look what happened in Roe v. Wade. I mean, if you talk about their lost capital, the biggest hit they've taken since Bush v. Gore is the overruling of Roe v. Wade. He didn't want to do it. Roberts wanted to, do, but there were 5 to his right, and that's, it's not one court, it's 9 justices, and that matters.
Yeah. So can we just jump over for a second to Georgia? Yeah. So with Georgia, while we sit and we wait for Judge McAfee to decide Fani Willis's fate, he dismissed, 3 counts against Trump?
3 against Trump, 6 altogether, yeah.
Yeah, 6 altogether. So 3 against Trump and then 6 altogether. But one thing that he did not do, McAfee, is he did not dismiss the indictment. Do you read anything into that decision? And how do you think that those 6 dismissed counts are going to affect the entire? Because I know that there's, 54 counts or something like that?
Yeah, look, I see it at the margins in small potatoes. First, what did he say? What he said is there are 6 counts that basically say the defendants pushed, and he says the conduct's very clear. This is the Raffensperger call and other things. They pushed on them and the Georgia statute is to violate their oaths of offices. The oaths of office just say, I'll comply with the Constitution. And McAfee's point was, it doesn't really clearly say. There's a lot of different ways to violate your oath of office. You didn't clarify it, and it's going to be hard for them to know what to do. In the federal system, as you know, it wouldn't matter. There'd be a so-called bill of particulars, and then the prosecution would be forced to explain it more. And he actually dropped a footnote lamenting they don't have it in Georgia, but they don't. So I actually think it was a reasonable decision on his part. But the most important thing is it was an inconsequential one in the overall scheme of things. As you say, the big RICO count, which is everything, stays in for all, and more. Everybody has more than the RICO count except for Mark Meadows. And moreover, everything that comes with it, including all this conduct, the Raffensperger call, etc., it's all part and parcel of the overall important scheme to steal the election. It's just this discrete theory that you would use that evidence for to put that you were trying to get these Georgia officials to violate their oaths of offices. That's an argument you can't do anymore because it's just not clear enough, says McAfee, for them to understand how to defend against it. But that's either sentencing-wise, proof-wise, what goes in front of a jury. None of it really matters, I think, that much. And I don't know, McAfee will really, by tomorrow, we expect the decision about Fani Willis. That would obviously upend the entire deck of cards here. I don't think he's going to actually disqualify her. We'll see. But so far, he's proven himself to me to be a pretty methodical, thoughtful judge, including this little ruling. I can see it. I can see, a fair, just don't think that it's Trump, just a generic person saying, how am I supposed to defend? What do they mean I violated? They were trying to, I tried to get them to violate their oath. What part of it, et cetera. I think it's okay, but most importantly to your question, I don't think it has a lot of consequences, nor does it sort of show his hand on what he's going to do in general in other big motions, which some people are speculating.
So let me ask you this then, because obviously this entire ordeal between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade has really just muddied the water on this case. And in fact, this is I think it's a simple case to try. Yeah, I really do, which is why Fani Willis came right out of the gate, with that indictment. What do you think would be best for the case, right? Would it be best for the case if maybe Fani Willis is taken off the case? Should she walk away, hand it to her team? Should she just stay? And should they get rid of Nathan Wade? Or keep him and then proceed? What do you think overall is the best for this case?
Yeah, it's a great question because, I don't think I told you that I've respected McAfee to date, but I think the whole motion that she should be disqualified really wasn't well taken. There's no financial conflict of interest here. It's not plausible to think she brought him on so they could go on lavish vacations and he would pay for flowers. But you're totally right that the case has been so muddied, and I think it's better for the case for some turning of the page. I don't think her stepping aside, well, at least if she can't, if he recuses her, Michael, the office goes with her. She's the head of the office, and so that would take it to a whole nother DA.
Well, that's that, but that's not really what I was saying. So what I was saying was,
if she just says, "I'm out of this," you mean?
Even
though I don't have to be.
Right, I don't have to leave, but for the benefit of the case, what I'm going to do is I don't want to be a distraction, not to Trump, not to the jurors, not to my office, and instead I'm going to turn it over to the assistant district attorney.
You know what? So I do think that would be for the good of the case, but man, it's the biggest case ever. Would she actually do it? But I think
remember, this isn't about her.
Of her own. It has become a kind of right. They just passed a bill. They're going to be going after her personally within Georgia. There's a commission. She has acted improperly, I think, not in any way that affects this case or should, but it's a big mess that may have ethics issues or whatever. She shouldn't have been having an affair, and when did it start, et cetera. That would be a good development if you ask me, just in terms of justice. Or I can imagine her saying, okay, I'm going to discharge Wade to just get rid of that kind of, bad kind of odor in the case, to try to you want to separate out these two things really that don't have much to do with one another. So if you're just asking in a cold-blooded way, what would be best for the case? it's a hard thing to ask a prosecutor to step aside from the biggest case of her career. But yeah, the most she can do to just get this crap off the stage is all to the good. And you're right. The best way to do that would be to say, okay, I'll go deal with everything else in the office and leave this, unblemished to the other professional lawyers so they can't come attacking us. I don't see that happening, but I think it'd be a good move. Yeah.
And just so you know that the odor is not coming from this case, it's coming from Donald von Schitzenpants's diaper. All right.
Yeah.
He happens to be
his acolytes in Georgia who are ready to, now do his bidding, try to make it about her.
Same thing.
What you always do when you have bad evidence. Yeah.
Exactly. So last week, the House interviewed Special Counsel Robert Hur about his report on the Biden document case. And to be very clear, it did not go well. Right? Hur politicized his report when he knew that he was going to be under a shit ton of scrutiny. And then he resigns from the Department of Justice after he turned in the report. Any insights as to why Hur resigned?
Sure. I don't think you'd need a lot of insight. It's so he could feel unburdened and be able to testify as a private citizen. You still work for the Department of Justice. You can't say whatever you want. Now, once you leave it, you can't say whatever you want either. You can't talk about things that aren't in the report. And you saw him pretty fastidious there, as a stone-faced prosecutor saying, yes, that is on page 36. Yes, that's on page 44. But he was able to elaborate on what I think was an improper part of his report and now looks even worse than it did at the time. This emphasis on Biden's mental acuity, really didn't have the place that he put it in because of the way the special counsel regs work. He wasn't supervised on it as if it really was a factor in whether or not you bring the case. But B, it to me seemed really less credible. I mean, when you saw the entire transcript of the 5 hours you've been grilled for hours. Most people fortunately haven't, but there's going to be some weak moments for anyone, like when Trump doesn't know that E. Jean Carroll isn't Marla Maples. And overall, I think, which is really the fair way to do it, and both the New York Times and Washington Post did this pretty well. You take the whole transcript. Biden knows what's going on. Yeah, sometimes he's like, oh, with that, am I still vice president? He says some things you could try to assail, but I think it was also, besides out of place and inapposite, I think it was distorted and not fair for him to try to make these points about, which of course dovetail perfectly with Republican talking points, whether or not that was his goal, about Biden's vitality and acuity.
I mean, let me be clear. You have the Republicans, and with all due respect to them, who think that they're fucking geniuses. They're not. You get guys like Jamie Raskin, who got up there, or Steve Cohen, or, the Democrats were so prepared in their questioning of her as to actually make him look really stupid, look partisan, and just look incompetent. And truth be told, he is not. So why he did it, obviously partisan purpose. But it brings me to my last question to you, right? I spoke to Congressman Raskin the other night. And I understand that the two of you are doing something, or you're working on something together. Is that true? And I'm a little shocked that he didn't mention it to me. I mean, I thought our relationship was a little bit better than that. In all fairness too, Harry, all right? I thought we had a better relationship than that. Nobody tells me shit anymore. I got to find this out through back channels. What are you working on? Spill the beans, my man.
Well, there is another way, which is this thing they call the internet and Google, because it's not a secret. But thanks for mentioning it.
Where do you think I got it from?
So I got a speaker series I'm now bringing to San Diego with a lot of great people. And the first one Jamie Raskin's going to be here Monday. We'll be in conversation, an immediate sellout here in San Diego, and we got great stuff to come. So I appreciate your mentioning it. And I do think you're right with her, Raskin, Schiff, they really were very sharp. I don't want to trash her necessarily, but man, the Dems have truth on their side, and that always helps. But yes, talkingsandiego.net. You can find out if you're anywhere in the area about some really great conversations that I'm looking forward to having, starting with one, Jamie Raskin on Monday. So might be as fun as an hour with you, Michael. You never know.
You never know. Harry, my friend, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for helping to clarify so much of this mishigas that we're all dealing with. You're the man. Appreciate you. And I'll see you very soon. Need to get you back.
Back at you. Thanks, Michael.